Human beings are pretty creative. We can create some amazing things, but we've all wondered, if there is a God and God created the universe, what on earth does that God look like, and how on earth did God actually do it? This is the Tyger. Hi, so we're going to take a look at the poem The Tyger by William Blake. Take time to read the poem now, pause the video. So to summarise the poem, it's a poem about who or what created the magnificent Tyger. But as we all know, this poem is about something else. The Tyger is obviously symbolic of something else. And to understand what those other things are, we need to understand a little bit about the poet. Now, the first thing is that William Blake is a romantic poet. And by that, he felt that emotion and nature is more important than reason and industry. During the 1800s, romantic poets were upset by how industrialization was destroying the countryside and effectively seemingly taking over the world. So a lot of romantic poems contrast the difference between the natural world and the world of mankind. And when we're talking about nature, we can't just think of nature as pretty flowers and fluffy clouds. There's a side to nature called the sublime beauty nature, and that's when we see beauty in nature's destructiveness or beauty in nature's brutal power. And finally, romantic poets were interested in medievalism. They looked back to the past and romanticized the past a little bit. So a lot of their poems have things like kings and princesses and heroes in them. They have a lot of magic, a lot of supernatural in them, and also the exotic, maybe strange and obscure places. Hence why I think the poem is called, it spells Tyger incorrectly. It spells it with a Y. And I think it's very simply, it's to make the Tyger seem more exotic, possibly more magical. There are different ways you can interpret this particular poem. That's why it makes it so interesting. What everyone can agree on is this is a poem about the extraordinary power of God, both destructive and creative. Where people get different interpretations is, what does the Tyger symbolize? Some people say the Tyger symbolizes humanity in both its beauty and its power and its destructiveness. However, I interpret this poem as the Tyger representing the immense power of nature overall, in both its destructiveness and its beauty. And in fact, the poem is a criticism of mankind. Human beings use tools like hammers and chains and furnaces and anvils, and that's how we make things, particularly in the industrial era. But this constant questioning that the poet uses, what the hammer, what the chain, what the anvil, suggests to me at least that it's ridiculous to imagine that a god would have to resort to using simple tools like hammers and chains and anvils to create a Tyger. But if there was a god that did use such tools, they would be tools of such unimaginable power. They would be impossible for us, ordinary mortals, to even imagine. And therefore I think the poem is also a comment on the capitalists and industrialists of the industrial era. To me, the poet is saying to the industrialists, stop thinking you're so amazing with your hammers and anvils and all your technology, because none of those things could ever create something as magnificent as a Tyger. Only God can create a Tyger. Only God can create beauty. And you must not forget that, because that God you are ignoring is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. So the form of a poem is a lyrical poem. It's not a story, so it's not a narrative poem, it's a lyrical poem, and a lyrical poem is simply an expression of an idea or an emotion. In this anthology, there are two main forms of poems. They're either lyrical or they're narrative. There is a third form of poetry, which is dramatic poetry. That's the sort of poetry you find in William Shakespeare's plays. So if you were comparing The Tyger with My Last Duchess, that's one point you could say is different, that My Last Duchess is a narrative poem, whereas Tyger is a lyrical one. For me, the outstanding features of this poem are its structural features. Let's take a look at those. The first thing that stands out is the whole poem is in Trochaic Tetrameter. Trochaic is that dum-da, 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 dum-da rhythm, and tetrameter means there are 4 feet, 4 measures in each line. It really creates a powerful sound, a powerful rhythm, which I think reflects the powerful rhythms of nature, and it also mirrors that beating of a hammer, the beating of industry, and mocks it, but by rhetorically questioning what the. Now, if you sat down and actually counted the syllables, you'll probably notice that in some cases it doesn't seem to completely add up. For example, if you look at line 4, if you're following that Trochaic Tetrameter rhythm, it would go, could frame thy fear, false symmetry. It sounds wrong, but I think when you speak it, the could becomes very, very quick. So it becomes, could frame thy fearful symmetry. So I'll just read that first stanza for you. Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Symmetry doesn't rhyme perfectly with I. It's what you call a half rhyme. You may also have noticed that each line is missing the unstressed beat of the trochaic foot. So Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Missing a beat. Now, this is called a masculine ending. It's a very common practice in poetry. It's where you take away the unstressed beat at the end, which is considered a feminine beat, and you end on that powerful masculine ending. And I think it adds to the rhythm. It gives it a little pause, makes it sound attractive, but also it emphasizes the power of nature by finishing on that masculine beat. Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forest of the night. And seeing as William Blake is trying to get across that unending regular power through his rhythms, it wouldn't make sense to do this poem in free verse, so it follows a very strict form or strict shape. It's 6 quatrains. Quatrains means 4 lines, so 6 by 4 lines, and I think that matches the strong regular rhythm of each line, and that reflects the strong unyielding power behind this god that has created the tiger. It's also written in rhyming couplets, and again I think that just simply adds to the above effect, that regular unchanging rhythm and power of nature and God. However, there is one change to this fixed pattern, and I think it's important. It's deliberate. Line 20 changes into iambic tetrameter, and I think this makes the reader stop and pause and change how they're speaking, to give a moment to ponder God, to allow the idea to settle in their brain. Let me show you. When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his works to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? That question about the lamb I'll deal with at the end, because it's a powerful turning point in the poem, and it relates to another poem that William Blake wrote. And finally, the final stanza is a repeat of the first stanza, a circular structure suggesting the unending power of God, in the same way that Of Mice End starts and ends at the same place, suggesting that the problems are unending. The only difference is that there's one word. In the first stanza it says could, in the last stanza it says dare, and we'll come to that when we're talking about the key language features. So like I said at the beginning, I think